There are five things that NASA wants all pathways applicants to know. There are one, timeliness, two, the 12 competencies, three, the CAR method, four, AI policies, and five, I'll reveal at the end. In this video, I'm going to walk you through all of them and I'm going to give you the context that they want you to know in a timely manner. Okay, starting with point number one, timeliness. As you probably already know, thousands of people applied to be a Pathways intern, which means you have to have all your information ready right away. There are three internship cycles in a year, spring, summer, and fall, but the application window only opens twice a year, in the spring and in the fall. Both times it only happens for 5 days, so you have to have everything ready right away. So before either of the two application windows open, you want to make sure you have a USA Jobs account set up because this is where you'll be applying. And then also make sure to take note that your resume can be no longer than 2 pages. That's just the new standard, but yours is probably less than that anyways. But the 12 competencies are 12 competencies that NASA's going to evaluate you on, and you have to be perfectly aligned to NASA's values on all of them, or you don't move on. So what are the 12 competencies? They are accountability, attention to detail, customer service, decision making, flexibility, integrity and honesty, interpersonal skills, learning, reading, self management or achievement, stress tolerance, and teamwork. Those are the 12 competencies that they're going to evaluate you on. I'll link that video in the description so you can check it out and see exactly how NASA themselves wants you to be aligned on those competencies. So here's how it works. As part of the application process, you're going to have to take a test. And keep in mind, it's a pretty long test, about 2 to 3 hours long. So they recommend you setting aside plenty of time. And as I mentioned before, don't put this off to the last second or you're not going to have enough time to get it done. All right, so it's a 2 to 3 hour long exam. They're going to grade you along those 12 competencies based on questions like this. Here's an example of a question that they'll ask. It's just, simple, um, well, depending on how you think of it, pretty simple situational examples where they're going to use those to figure out, you know, how accountable is this guy? How honest is this guy? And how much integrity does this guy actually have? You know, how much achievement does this guy display? Things like that. So they'll ask you these types of questions. You've probably done things like this before, but pretty extensive. The NASA version, 2 to 3 hours long. You'll be graded across metrics like qualified, highly qualified, and best qualified. Now, as I mentioned, thousands of people apply to NASA, and NASA knows this. So in order to weed it out a little bit, um, only the people who score in the best qualified category across all 12 move on. It's pretty strict, right? But thousands apply. This is how they weed them out. It's kind of like software engineering, as some of you guys know. Almost everyone who applies for a software engineering role gets past the first stage, which is the online assessment, but it then falls on you to pass the assessment. If you don't pass the assessment, you don't move on. It's kind of the same thing here. One thing to note though, if there are, depending on what you apply for, will depend on if you have to take the assessment. The job roles are ranked on a scale. GS1 to GS15, 15 being the most complex, 1 being the least complex. GS11 and up don't have to take the assessment. They have to do like a self-assessment. So they'll, do the same 12 competencies, I believe, and then they'll just rank themselves on it. I think their interview process might be a little more stringent, so maybe they'll have to like in the actual interview process prove themselves a little bit more. I don't know. But yeah, just GS11 up, don't have to do it. GS10 and below, you do have to take the assessment, right? So it's the first big filter. So just make sure you have enough time and really study those competencies to make sure that you align with it. Because as I mentioned, if you don't fall in best qualified in all of them, you don't move on. That's simple. Next is the CAR method, which stands for Challenge Action Result. This is just how NASA wants you to structure your resume in order to kind of tell a narrative story arc. That's how they worded it, so that they can see the impact that you did, and they can have a better understanding of how you deliver that impact. The situational, awareness, whatever. Here's two examples. Don't just say you designed a new fixture for testing a component, okay? Right? Because what's the result of that new component that you tested? What's the level of impact? Okay, what was the challenge? Why'd you even do it in the first place? Right. So instead of saying that, you could say you redesigned a machine, a SolidWorks based test fixture to fix measurement inconsistency, improving test repeatability by 25% and reducing setup time by 40%. right? Because when you do it like this shows that, okay, well, what was a challenge? Okay, there are some inconsistent measurements. Okay, what actions you took, you redesigned a machine, a new alignment fixture, and then the result was, test repeatability increased by 25%, setup time decreased by 40%. Now, they really like those percentages, right? They really want to see, how did you actually deliver measurable impact in the thing that you worked on, right? So another example, don't just say you helped with system integration for a robotic assembly line. Okay, again, what was the impact of that? Why did you do it in the first place, right? So instead of saying something like that, you could say, you calibrated sensors and optimized system logic for a robotic assembly line, cutting alignment errors by 60% and boosting throughput by 15%. Right. Now, granted, you guys are, college when you're doing this, so these are kind of verbose, but you just want to convey impact, right? You want to say, I had this challenge, this is the action that I took on it, and this is the result that I got. Okay, that's all you want to convey. Key emphasis on measurable statistics impacts. And honestly, you can make some of these up because I know you guys aren't actually tracking, you know, results like that. Just try to, come up with a reasonable statistic that you can back up if you're pressed on it. That's my recommendation, but they really want to see measurable impact. So that's what I say. If you want some examples on some resumes to base yours off of, I actually built an aerospace resume bank, linked down in the description below. Yeah, it has a bunch of about 25 or so resumes from SpaceX, NASA, Blue Origin. You really want to know the NASA ones. But there's some other, good ones in there too that will help you structure your resume. So check that out if that's something you're interested in. Now, NASA's AI policy is pretty simple. It's no AI. Okay, we love AI, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude. They're all pretty cool, but they just don't want you to use it. Okay, I don't know if they have some special way to track if you're using an AI generated response, but best practice just don't use it. They want you to be completely authentic yourself. Yeah, this is a great way to actually practice point number six, integrity and honesty, right? So just don't use it. They just want you to do your own research, okay? And one of the things you do want to research is the actual locations that you'll be working at. For each NASA location does different types of engineering work, different type of scientific work, just different type of work in general. So you want to research each location, tailor your application for the work at that location, so you can have a better chance of getting in. Just one extra step you can do. Yeah, so do your own research. AI is great, but not for NASA. And then the final point, okay, I'll answer it with a question. Okay, how many engineers does it take to build a rocket? Okay, it's actually a trick question, okay, because it takes a lot more than engineers to build a rocket, all right? You can't do it without engineers, all right? You need different people like, accountants, writers, project managers, IT people, human resources. Engineers are definitely important. They're a big part of the puzzle, but they're still just a piece of the puzzle, and NASA understands this, right? So 25% of pathways applicants are not engineers. Okay. I think NASA actually sets this aside because they understand that, it takes a lot of different people to build a rocket and to do all the things that NASA wants to do. So if you're not an engineer and you want to work at NASA as a pathways intern, you definitely can. You just have to make sure that you're emphasizing, NASA's values, right? So those 12 competencies, you have to be really aligned on that. And also you have to be, I mean, like what's big at NASA right now? The whole big push right now is the return to the moon. So you have to be really, dialed in on that mission. Like you're really supportive of it. You really believe in it. So as long as that's you, then yeah, you should be able to get into NASA, even if you're not an engineer. So to recap, the five things that NASA cares about: on timeliness, you got to apply on time. 2 to 12 competencies, you have to know them all, and you have to be well suited, best suited for all of them. 3, CAR, challenge action result. Your resume has to follow that format. 4, don't use AI. And 5, if you're not an engineer, you can still apply. Okay, big emphasis on those 12 competencies. Again, if you don't get best suited on all of them, you just don't move on, right? And even if you do move on, if you don't have your resume structured for challenge, action, result, you'll be overlooked. So 12 competencies, CAR, big two. All right. So again, if you need help structuring your resume, check out the Aerospace Resume Bank below, or check this video out where I actually talk about the Aerospace Resume Bank. We're all gonna make it. See you later.